All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. This is Mr. Huff. We're going to be talking about Unit 4, Lesson 5 today, American Foreign Policy. Foreign policy includes all military, diplomatic, and commercial relationships with other nations. It also includes any statements and actions dealing with foreign relations like alliances, treaties, trade, defense, foreign aid, and international cooperation. Foreign policy can be both proactive and reactive. As chief diplomat and commander in chief, the American president sets the course of foreign policy for the country. All right, so to break all of that down, essentially what that's saying is that foreign policy is how the United States interacts with other countries. That could be interacting through, military means, or it could be interacting with trade relationships, all kinds of different ways that we interact with other countries. And the president, he's as the chief executive, is the commander in chief of the military, and he's also the chief diplomat. So ultimately, all of this foreign policy falls on the president's shoulders. Okay, as we move through the lesson, consider the following. How does the U.S.'s status as the world's only superpower affect American foreign policy? What principles of American foreign policy have remained consistent? Which ones have changed and why? And how have various presidents shaped American foreign policy with their doctrines? All right, so that's kind of what we're going to be looking at here. One of the big concepts to understand about foreign policy, as it relates to the history of the United States, is that, excuse me, in general, we as a country have shifted from isolationism early in our history to interventionism today. And those are two really important terms, and you need to understand what those mean. So let's talk about that. Okay, since its inception, American foreign policy has evolved and adapted with the changing times. From the Monroe Doctrine, a practiced policy of isolationism, to becoming the world's policeman through a policy of intervention in world affairs, the U.S. has acted in an interest of self-preservation and protection of interest abroad. Through it all, however, the American president has taken the lead in directing and carrying out the country's foreign policy with the aid of the Department of State. So isolationism essentially means that we as a country are going to be focused on what's going on here in the United States, and we're not going to be too involved in what's going on with other countries. And early in our history, we were very isolated. So we practiced isolationism. Over time, however, we became more and more involved in the affairs of other countries and the affairs of what's going on in other parts of the world, and we became more interventionists, meaning that we would intervene when events happen in other countries. So essentially, we moved from isolationism to interventionism. The foremost foreign policy mandate of every nation is to protect and defend its own country. This holds true for the U.S. as well. However, the U.S. is also focused on protecting American interest abroad. So why do you think that's a necessary part of American foreign policy? That's a good question to think about. Why is it that we have prioritized protecting American interests overseas and abroad in other countries as well? Originally, the U.S. practiced a policy of isolationism, or staying out of world affairs, and focusing on domestic policy. Domestic policy meaning things that happen inside the country. It was not until other nations began to encroach upon the Western Hemisphere that the U.S. began to revisit this stance. Okay, so you're going to read Topic 6, the Executive Branch at Work, Lesson 4, Foreign Policy Overview, beginning through World War I, at the bottom of 262 to 264. So you can read all of that and think about why is it that we were isolationists for the first 150 years of our existence, all right? And then you'll read about things like the Monroe Doctrine and the Roosevelt Corollary and the Good Neighbor Policy. So those are important things to be sure to pick up on. But the big theme of this unit, one of the big themes is that our foreign policy has shifted from isolationism early in our history to interventionism today. The Second World War brought a permanent end to the U.S. policy of isolationism. That's really important. I would put that in my notes. World War II is what shifted us permanently from isolationism to interventionism. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, the U.S. entered into a primarily European war. At the end of World War II, many nations embraced the foreign policy principle of collective security, acting together against any threats to peace. The U.S. also began a policy of deterrence, or discouraging attacks, by building the largest and most advanced military in the world. When World War II started, we had a relatively small military. And after World War II was over, and throughout the decades that followed, we had the largest military in the world. Okay, and so that's, again, shifting from isolationism to interventionism. All right, so you can read about from World War II to the end of the Cold War on pages 265 to 268, and think about, as you read it, what do you expect to see? Well, I would expect to see it talking about American foreign policy as interventionist. That first section you read in the last slide was all about American foreign policy being isolationist. Well, now this is going to be about American foreign policy being interventionists. When you finish reading, you should be able to answer these questions. What brought about the end of U.S. isolationist policies? What does collective security mean? And why did the U.S. begin to practice deterrence? Good vocabulary terms here. And all of that you're going to get here out of this set of reading here. Contemporary foreign policy, what's going on right now. Contemporary foreign policy arose from experiences and global changes that led to the U.S. to recognize that the world is interconnected. No one nation can simultaneously isolate itself and participate in global exchange. Therefore, the U.S. has become increasingly involved in all regions of the world through both military action and diplomacy. Okay, so you read that section 269 to 272 and think about major changes currently evolving with American foreign policy, specifically economic conditions, wars and political upheavals, nuclear threats, American strategic interests. So you'll read about all of that in that section. Then here's a great activity for you to complete. Select the link to access the major diplomatic hotspots interactive map from the Realize website, and use that map to answer the following. Where are most of the hotspots clustered? What interest does the U.S. have in the Middle East? What actions has the U.S. taken in these diplomatic hotspots? And when you open this up, you'll see a map, and I think that it's going to be really helpful in you understanding kind of where are some of the areas where foreign policy is most important to the U.S. And you're going to see something kind of interesting, that they're all kind of clustered together. Okay. So you can read about that. All right. And then finally, you're going to end here with this video. So you're going to watch the video, and I'll let you watch it on your own. But after you watch it, you should be able to answer this. Why does the U.S. offer foreign aid to other nations? Okay. And why would it be difficult for the U.S. to adopt a policy of isolationism today? All right. So, again, we've gone from isolationism early in our history to interventionism today. Interventionism means that we do offer foreign aid to other countries, and the video will talk a little bit about that and why we do that. And then think about, well, if we wanted to shift back to isolationism, how would we do that? Would that be difficult? And so that question 2 kind of deals with that. All right. So that's it. And then we're on to the quick check. I'll let you finish that up. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Hope you're having a great day.